Hey everyone, welcome back to Into the Pit. This is going to be part 2 of the second story, To Be Beautiful. The first half was kind of a slow burner, but this second half should be... It gets pretty crazy, especially towards the end, but I'm not going to spoil anything, obviously. Again, let me know what you think about the story in the comments, because I'm really curious. Let me know your predictions, because those are fun to read. I'm just kind of curious what your guys' thoughts are, because I know it's a crazy read. At school, Sarah could feel eyes on her. Boys' eyes. From the first time she felt noticed. She felt seen. It was dizzying, exciting. In the hall on her way to English, a trio of boys, cute boys, looked at her, then looked at one another and whispered something, then laughed. But it wasn't a mean or mocking laugh. Wondering what they'd said, Sarah looked back at them and bumped right into... No, it couldn't be. Not again. Mason Blair. She felt her face flushing and braced herself for him to tell her to watch where she was going. Again. But instead, he smiled. He had really great teeth, straight and white. "We have to stop bumping into each other like this," he said. "Actually, I think it's me bumping into you," Sarah said. "At least I wasn't carrying a salad this time." "Yeah." His smile was dazzling. "That was really funny." "Yeah," Sarah said, though it struck her as strange that he said the salad incident was funny now. When it had happened, he seemed annoyed. "Well, if you're going to keep running into me, I at least need to know your name. I can't just keep calling you Salad Girl." "I'm Sarah, but you can call me Salad Girl if you want." "Nice to really meet you, Sarah. I'm Mason." "I know." She could have kicked herself, so much for playing it cool. "Okay, well, see you around, Sarah the Salad Girl." He gave her one last smile. "See you," Sarah said. She continued on her way to English, but all she could think about was that she just had a conversation, a real human conversation, with Mason Blair. Sarah sat down next to Abby in class. "Mason Blair just talked to me," Sarah whispered. "Like, talked to me. "I'm not surprised," Abby whispered back. "There's something about you lately." "What do you mean?" Abby crinkled her forehead the way she did when she was thinking hard. "I don't know. I can't exactly put it into words. It's like you're glowing from the inside out." Sarah smiled. "Yeah, that is what it's like." But really, it was the changes on the outside that were making her glow inside. In the evening, after Eleanor did her wake-up movement, Sarah threw her arms around her. It felt strange to hug something so hard and cold. And when Eleanor's arms encircled Sarah, she felt a flicker of what could have been fear, but she quickly pushed the feeling away. There was nothing to be afraid of. Eleanor was her friend. "Eleanor," Sarah said, drawing back from the hug, "I couldn't be happier. I'm perfect. Thank you so much." "I'm glad," Eleanor said, cocking her head. "All I want is for you to be happy, Sarah." "Well, I'm loads happier than I was before I found you," Sarah said. "Today it was like I could feel all these people seeing me, and they liked what they saw. The guy I've had a crush on for months even noticed me and talked to me." "That's wonderful," Eleanor said. "I'm glad I've been able to make all your wishes come true, Sarah." A dark cloud suddenly passed over the brightness of Sarah's mood. "Well," she said, "not all of them." She reached up and touched her potatoey nose. "Really?" Eleanor sounded surprised. "What is it that you still wish, Sarah?" Sarah took a deep breath. "I love how I look now," she said. "I really do. But I'm kind of what some guys call pretty from afar, but far from pretty." Eleanor cocked her head again. "Pretty from afar? I don't understand, Sarah." "Well, you know, guys will say, 'She looks great from far away, but don't get too close to her face.'" "Oh, far from pretty. I understand now," Eleanor said. She laughed, a metallic tinkling. "It is very amusing." "It's not if someone's using it to describe you," Sarah said. "I suppose it isn't," Eleanor said. She reached up and touched Sarah's cheek. "Sarah, do you really want me to change all this? Do you want a new face?" "I do," Sarah said. "I want a tiny nose and full lips and high cheekbones. I don't want to look like Mrs. Mix-and-Match anymore." Eleanor laughed her tiny, tinkly laugh again. "I can do this for you, Sarah, but you have to understand, it's a big change. All of these other things could be normal for a child your age, just normal growths, but your face, that is something that you look in the mirror and say, 'That's me.' It's true your face changes as you grow, but it's still recognizable as you. To see a totally different face as your reflection can be quite a shock. It's a shock I want, Sarah said. I hate my face the way it is. Very well, Sarah, Eleanor said, looking into her eyes. As long as you're sure. After Sarah ate dinner with her mom and did her homework, she showered and got ready for Eleanor to put her to sleep one more time. But as she snuggled under the covers, a disturbing thought occurred to her. Eleanor? Yes, Sarah? She was already standing beside Sarah's bed. What will my mom think if I sit down to eat breakfast in the morning and have a totally different face? Eleanor sat down on the bed. It is a good question, Sarah, but she won't notice. Not really. She may think you look especially well rested, but you won't notice that your plain face has been replaced with a beautiful one. Mothers always think their children are beautiful, so when your mother looks at you, she has always seen great beauty. Oh, okay, Sarah said, feeling relaxed again. No wonder her mother didn't understand her problems. She thought her daughter was already beautiful. I'm ready, then. Just like before, Sarah felt the changes before she saw them. As soon as she woke, she reached up and touched her nose. She felt not a potato-like bulb, but a pert little point. She ran her hands over the sides of her face and felt clearly defined cheekbones. She hopped out of bed to take a look. It was amazing. The person looking back at Sarah was a totally different person from before. Eleanor was right. It was a shock. But it was a good kind of shock. Everything she had hated about her appearance was gone and had been replaced with absolute perfection. Her eyes were wide and a deeper blue and fringed with long, sooty lashes. Her eyebrows were delicate arches. Her nose was tiny and perfectly straight. Her hair, while still brown, was fuller and shinier. She looked herself up and down. She smiled at herself with straight white teeth. She was the total package. She surveyed the clothes in her closet. None of them seemed worthy of her new beauty. Maybe when Mom took her shopping next, they could pick out a few outfits. School was a totally new experience. She could feel everybody's eyes on her, guys and girls alike. When she looked at the beautifuls, who also happened to be wearing red today, they looked back at her, not with disdain, but with interest. At lunch, she mouthed hi to Abby, then walked straight to where the beautifuls were sitting. This time she didn't sit right down at their table, but made a show of casually wandering past it. Hey, new girl, Lydia called. You want to come sit with us? She wasn't remotely a new girl to the school, but she was a new girl in her looks. Sure, thanks, she said. She tried to sound casual, like it didn't make any difference to her whether or not she sat with them or with somebody else, but inside, she was excited. So, Lydia said, what's your name? Sarah. She had hoped Sarah was a name they'd found acceptable. It wasn't too bad. It wasn't like Hilda or Bertha or anything. I'm Lydia. Lydia tossed her lustrous blonde hair. She was pretty enough to be a model. She would fit right in with the pictures on the wall of Sarah's room. None of the other girls needed any introduction, but they introduced themselves anyway. So, Lydia said, who's your dress by? Sarah had watched enough fashion shows on TV to know Lydia was asking about the designer. It's from Saks Fifth Avenue, she said. It was true. The label of the dress did read that, but, however, Sarah and her mom had bought it at a local thrift store. Her mom was so excited when they found it. She loved thrifting. How often do you get to New York? Lydia asked. Once or twice a year, Sarah lied. She had been to New York once when she was 11. She and her mom had seen a Broadway show, ridden a ferry to the Statue of Liberty, and gone up in the Empire State Building. They had done no shopping in fancy stores. The only clothing Sarah had bought was an I Love New York t-shirt at a souvenir shop. A few washings had worn it thin as tissue paper, but she still slept in it sometimes. So, Sarah, Emma said, regarding her with doe-like brown eyes, what does your mom and dad do for a living? Sarah tried not to bristle visibly at the word dad. Mom's a social worker, and Dad... Before her dad had left Sarah and her mom, he'd been a long-distance truck driver. Now she wasn't even sure what he did or where he lived. He moved a lot, changed girlfriends a lot. He called her on Christmas and her birthday. He's a lawyer. The beautifuls nodded their approval. One more question. This came from Jillian, the redhead with the cat-like green eyes. Do you have a boyfriend? Sarah felt her face heat up. Well, no, not at the moment. They didn't seem satisfied with that answer, though, so she told them about Mason. They then chimed their approval. So, Lydia said, looking Sarah over, Don't follow us around like a puppy dog or anything, but if you want to sit with us at lunch, then sit. On Sunday afternoons, we go to the mall. It's lame, but it's something to do. This town's so boring." She yawned theatrically. "So boring," Sarah agreed, but inside she was buzzing with excitement. Lydia nodded. "We'll hang out a little and see how things go. If it works out, maybe you can go out for cheerleader next year. Consider this a trial period." Sarah left the cafeteria smiling to herself. Abby caught up to her. "Looks like you were having some kind of intense job interview back there," Abby said. She was wearing gray sweatpants with her bulky purple sweater that did nothing to show off her shape. "Yeah, kind of. They invited me to hang out, though, so I guess I passed the test." She couldn't stop herself from smiling. Abby raised an eyebrow. "And those are the kind of friends you want? The kind that make you pass a test?" "They're cool, Abby. They know all about fashion and makeup and guys." "They're shallow, Sarah. They're as shallow as a rain puddle. No, I take that back. They're so shallow they make a rain puddle look like the ocean." Sarah shook her head. She loved Abby, she really did, but why did she have to be so judgmental? "But they rule the school, that's how it works. It's the beautiful people who get what they want." She looked at Abby's gorgeous brown complexion. "You could be beautiful too, Abby. You'd be the prettiest girl in the school if you lost the glasses and braids and bought some clothes that weren't so baggy." "If I didn't wear my glasses, I'd be walking into walls," Abby said, with a little edge in her voice. "And I like my braids and my baggy clothes. Especially this sweater. It's cozy." She shrugged her shoulders. "I guess I just like myself the way I am. Sorry if I'm not fancy or fashionable enough for you. I'm not like the cheerleaders or all those models and pop stars whose pictures you have plastered all over your room. But you know what? I'm a nice person, and I don't judge people on how they look or how much money they have, and I don't have to give a person a pop quiz to decide if I let them hang out with me or not." Abby looked at Sarah's face searchingly. "You have changed, Sarah, and not for the better." Abby turned her back on Sarah and marched down the hall. Sarah knew Abby was a little mad at her, but she also knew an apology and a hug would fix things once she'd had time to cool down. After the bell, walking toward the school bus, Sarah became suddenly aware of a presence behind her. "Hi," a male voice said. She turned to see Mason Blair, looking perfect in a blue shirt that brought out the color of his eyes. "Oh, hi. So, Lydia was telling me you guys were talking about me in the cafeteria today." "Well, Sarah fought the urge to run. "Say, if you don't have anything else to do you want to go over to the Brown Cow and have a cone with me?" Sarah smiled. She could hardly believe her good luck today. "I don't have anything else to do." The Brown Cow was basically a little concrete block shed that sold soft-serve ice cream and milkshakes. It was right across the street from school, but Sarah usually resisted the temptation of stopping there, since she had always been worried about her weight. She stood next to Mason at the counter, where the same bored-seeming old lady always took orders. "Chocolate, vanilla, or swirl?" he asked her. "Swirl," she said, making a move to open her purse. "Nah," Mason said, putting up his hand. "I got it. It's a cheap date. I can handle it." "Thanks." He had said date. It was a real date, Sarah's first. They sat across from each other at a picnic table. Mason attacked his cone with gusto. But Sarah didn't want to eat like a pig in front of Mason, she was afraid of making the ice cream dripping on her dress and making her look like a slob, so she ate slower. Even with her self-consciousness, though, she had to admit the cold, creamy treat was delicious. "I haven't had ice cream in ages," she said. "Why's that?" Mason said. "Watching your weight?" Sarah nodded. "No need to worry about that," Mason said. "You look great. It's funny, you've been going to this school a long time, right? I don't know how I only just noticed you." Sarah felt herself blushing. "You noticed me when I ran into you with that salad, right?" Mason looked at her with his ocean blue eyes. "I didn't notice you then the way I should have. I clearly need to pay better attention." "Me too," Sarah said, "so I don't keep plowing into people with trays of salad." Mason laughed. Sarah was amazed by how confident her new looks made her feel. She could eat ice cream with a cute guy and make jokes with him. The old Sarah would have been much too shy. Not that he would have asked out the old Mrs. Mix-and-Match Sarah for ice cream. Once they'd finished their cones, Mason said, "Hey, is your house pretty close? I could walk you back if you like." Sarah felt a twinge of anxiety. Mason's dad was a doctor, and his mom was a successful real estate agent, whose face was plastered on billboards. His family probably lived in a mansion on the fancy side of town. She wasn't ready for him to walk with her past the garbage dump to the plain little two-bedroom bungalow she she shared with her living from paycheck to paycheck single mom. I actually have to run a couple of errands this afternoon. Maybe another time? Sure, okay. Was it Sarah's imagination, or did he look kind of disappointed? He looked down at his shoes, then back up at Sarah. Hey, maybe we could go out for real sometime. Pizza and a movie, maybe? Sarah was pretty sure her heart had just turned a backflip. I'd like that. His expression brightened. How about this Saturday night? If you're free, of course. Sarah fought the urge to laugh. Had there ever been a Saturday night where she wasn't free? All the same, she didn't want to sound too eager. I think so, yeah. Great, we'll plan on it then. Sarah couldn't wait for Eleanor to wake up so she could tell her about her day. Finally, after what seemed like ages, Eleanor pivoted her waist and lifted her arms and said, Hello, Sarah. Sarah ran up to Eleanor and took both of her hands in hers. Oh, Eleanor, I just had the best day of my life. Then I have everything I ever wished for, Eleanor said. But remember, even though all your wishes are granted, the necklace still has to stay on. You can never ever take it off, I remember, Sarah said. She was always tempted to ask Eleanor what would happen if she took it off, but part of her was afraid to know the answer. Making you happy makes me happy, Sarah, Eleanor said. Sarah felt tears welling in her newly beautiful blue eyes. She knew she'd never have a better friend than Eleanor. On Saturday, Sarah was a ball of nervous energy. From the moment she woke up, all she could think about was the date. At breakfast, she was too nervous to eat much, even though Mom had made French toast, Sarah's favorite. You'll drive me to the pizza place and drop me off at 6, right? She said. Of course, Mom said, flipping through the newspaper. And you'll just drop me, right? You won't walk in with me or anything? Mom smiled. I promise I will not endanger your relationship by letting your new beau catch a glimpse of my horrifying face. Sarah laughed. It's not that, Mom. You're really pretty, actually. It's just that it looks kind of kiddish when your mom comes in with you, you know? I know, Mom said, sipping her coffee. I was 14 too once, believe it or not. And did you ride your dinosaur when you went out on dates? Sarah asked. Sometimes, Mom said. But usually I just invite him over to hang out in the family cave. She reached over and tousled Sarah's hair. Don't be too much of a smart aleck, or I might decide I'm too old and decrepit to drive you tonight. Have you figured out what you're going to wear? At this question, Sarah let out a dramatic moan. I can't decide. I mean, it's just pizza and a movie, so I don't want to dress like it's the most important event in my life, but at the same time, how I look is really important. So wear jeans and a nice shirt. You're a beautiful girl, Sarah. You'll look great in whatever you choose. Thanks, Mom. When Sarah's mom pulled into the parking lot of the Pizza Palooza, Sarah's stomach was so full of butterflies that she couldn't imagine there would ever be any room for pizza. She knew she looked nice, though, so that was some comfort. Text me when the movie's over and I'll come get you, Mom said. She reached over and squeezed Sarah's hand. And have fun. I'll try, Sarah said. Until recently, the idea of going out with Mason Blair would have been as realistic as the idea of her going out with a major pop star. It had been a fantasy, something she'd dreamed of, but never imagined would come true. Why was she so nervous when this was something she'd wanted for so long? Maybe that's what was making her nervous, the fact that she wanted it so much. But when she walked through the doorway and saw Mason waiting for her in front of the hostess's station, she immediately felt more at ease. Hi, you look great, he said. Thanks, you do too. He was dressed casually in a hoodie and a t-shirt for some video game, but he would look great in anything. After they got settled at one of the red leather booths with matching check tablecloths, Mason picked up a menu and said, So, what kind of pizza person are you? Thin crust, thick crust? Any favorite toppings? I'm a flexible pizza person, Sarah said. Despite her earlier nervousness, she was actually starting to feel hungry. I pretty much just like pizza in general, except for one thing. No pineapple on pizza ever. Agreed, Mason said, laughing. Pineapple on pizza is an abomination. It should be illegal. I'm gonna pause the reading here for a second, just to say that I, completely agree. Pineapple on pizza is, definitely very disgusting, and, I would never, ever eat pineapple on my pizza. Yeah, okay, back to the reading. I'm glad we agree on that, Sarah said. If we hadn't, I probably would have just had to walk out of here and abandon you. And I would have totally deserved it, Mason said. People who eat pineapple on pizza deserve to be alone. Yeah, they do. They agreed on thin crust pepperoni and mushroom pizza, and they chatted comfortably about their families and their hobbies as they ate. Mason had a lot of interests, and Sarah realized she probably didn't have enough of them. Before Eleanor, she had spent too much of her free time worrying about her appearance. Now that that problem was solved, she needed to branch out a little, listen to more music, read more books, maybe take up yoga or swimming. As a little kid, Sarah had loved swimming, but when she hit middle school, she was too self-conscious to let anybody see her in a swimsuit. By the time she and Mason walked next door to the movie theater, Sarah felt like they were just getting to know each other pretty well. He wasn't just cute, he was nice and funny too. And in the dark theater, when he reached over and took her hand in his, it was the perfect moment of a perfect night. That night, when Eleanor sprang to life, Sarah jumped up once again and hugged the robot's hard little body. "Thank you, Eleanor. Thank you for a perfect weekend." "You're welcome, Sarah." Eleanor hugged her back, and as always, the sensation was odd. There was no softness in her hug. "It's the least I could do. You have given me so much." Sarah settled down happily to sleep, but her rest was disturbed by a strange dream. She was on a date with Mason, sitting in the movie theater, but when he grasped over to hold her hand, it was not his hand she grasped, but Eleanor's. Tiny, white, metallic, and cold. The same hand she had grabbed to pull the robot girl out of the car trunk. When she turned to look at Mason in the seat next to her, he had changed into Eleanor. Eleanor smiled, revealing a mouthful of sharp teeth. In the dream, Sarah screamed. She opened her eyes to find Eleanor standing over her bed, her head lowered, staring at her with blank green eyes. Sarah gasped. "Did I make a noise in my sleep?" "No, Sarah." Sarah looked at Eleanor, who was standing so close to her bed she was touching it. "Then what are you doing standing over my bed?" "Didn't you know, Sarah?" Eleanor said. "I do this every night. I watch over you. I keep you safe." Maybe it was because of the dream, but for some reason Sarah didn't feel like letting Eleanor touch her. "Safe from what?" Sarah asked. "Safe from danger. Any danger. I want to protect you, Sarah." Okay. Thanks, I guess." She appreciated Eleanor's concern, appreciated everything Eleanor had done for her, but still, it was creepy for someone to watch you when you didn't know you were being watched, even if they were doing it for the best of intentions. "I can stand by the door if it makes you more comfortable, Sarah," Eleanor said. "Yeah, that would be great." Sarah was pretty sure she couldn't fall back asleep with Eleanor standing right over her like that. Eleanor strolled over to the door and stood guard there. "Good night, Sarah. Sleep well." "Good night, Eleanor." Sarah didn't sleep well. She didn't know what, but something was wrong. In the cafeteria, Sarah stood in line with the other beautifuls as they waited to empty their trays. Lydia had texted the night before, saying they should all wear skinny jeans today, so Sarah was wearing hers too. She'd brought the jeans and a few tops and a couple of pairs of cute shoes when her mom had taken her shopping the other week. "Can you believe what she's wearing? She dresses like a preschooler," Lydia said. "Like a preschooler from a poor family," Tabitha added. With horror, Sarah realized the girl they were criticizing was Abby, who was emptying her tray ahead of them. True, Abby was wearing pink overalls, so the preschooler comment wasn't too off mark, but it seemed mean to reduce somebody's whole value as a person to the clothes she wore. "That's Abby," Sarah heard herself saying. "She's really nice. She's been my friend since kindergarten." She almost found herself saying best friend, but she stopped herself in time. "Yeah," Lydia said, laughing, "but you've bought new clothes since kindergarten, and she hasn't." Everyone else laughed. Sarah tried for a smile, but she couldn't quite manage it. When it was Sarah's turn to dump her tray, she stepped on something slippery near the trash can. Her new shoes were cute, but they didn't have much traction. The fall felt like it took forever, but she was sure it was only a matter of seconds. Then, she was flat on her back, right in front of the whole school. "Sarah, that was hilarious," Lydia said. "What a klutz." She was doubled over, laughing. All the beautifuls were laughing along with her, saying, "Did you see her go down?" and "She hit the floor like a ton of bricks," and "How embarrassing." In Sarah's dazed state, she couldn't really tell which girl was saying what. Their voices sounded distant and distorted, almost as if Sarah was trying to hear them underwater. She tried to pull herself up, but something strange was happening to her body. She heard weird clashing and clanging sounds, and couldn't figure out where they were coming from. It didn't make sense, but they felt like they were coming from inside of her. She was shaking and jerking, and she couldn't make her body move the way it usually did. Her body was no longer under her control. She was scared. Had she hurt herself badly? Should she call her mom? Call an ambulance? And why were her new friends not helping her? They were still laughing, still looking at how stupid she looked and how funny it was. Then, the beautiful's laughter was replaced by screams. As if from a great distance, Sarah heard Lydia saying, "What's happening to her? I don't understand." "I don't know," one of the other girls said. "Somebody needs to do something." "Get a teacher, quick," another one said. A terrible thought occurred to Sarah. She put her hand to her throat. The necklace Eleanor gave her, the necklace that was never ever to be taken off, was gone. She must have knocked it off during the fall. She turned her head and saw it on the floor, just a little more than an arm's length away. She had to get it back. A hand reached down to help her. Sarah looked up to see that the hand belonged to Abby. She took it and allowed herself to be pulled up into an awkward standing position. When Sarah looked down at her body, she saw the reason for the girl's screams. It was changing. From the waist down, she was no longer a flesh-and-blood girl, but a jumbled collection of gears and bicycle spokes and hubcaps, rusted metal odds and ends, cast-off, useless parts that belonged in a wrecking yard. She locked eyes with Abby and saw her friend's horror at what she was, at what she had become. I've got to go," Sarah said. Her voice sounded different, metallic and harsh. Abby held out the necklace. "You dropped this," she said. Tears sparkled in her eyes. "Thank you, Abby. You're a good friend," Sarah said. She didn't say anything to the beautifuls, who had all backed away from her and were whispering among themselves. Sarah grabbed the pendant and ran as fast as her new, shambling makeshift metal legs would carry her out of the cafeteria and out of the school. Home. She had to get home. Eleanor would know what to do, would know how to help her. Sarah was still changing. Her torso was hardening, and when she ran, she made squeaking noises, like a door with hinges that needed oiling. She tried to fasten the necklace around her neck again, but her fingers had grown too stiff to manage the clasp. As she hurried down the sidewalk with a clattering, stumbling gait, people stopped to stare at her. Drivers slowed down their cars to gawk. People didn't look sympathetic or even just confused. They looked scared, like she was a monster, something that had been created by a mad scientist in a lab. It was only a matter of time until the villagers started chasing her with pitchforks and torches. She felt like crying, but apparently the kind of thing she was becoming was incapable of producing tears. Maybe tears would make her rust even worse. Her joints were getting stiffer and stiffer, and it was growing harder and harder to run. But she had to get home. Eleanor was the only one who could help her. Finally, after what seemed like hours, she reached her house. Somehow she managed to work the key in the door. She clinked and clanked through the living room and down the hall, calling, "Eleanor! Eleanor!" Her voice was a terrible metallic scraping. Eleanor was not in her usual corner of Sarah's room. Sarah searched the closet, looked under the bed, opened the chest at the front of the bed. No Eleanor. Sarah clomped through the kitchen, searching her mom's room, the bathroom, the kitchen, all the time calling Eleanor's name with her new, horrible voice. The garage was the only place she hadn't looked. She used the kitchen entrance, but doorknobs were getting difficult to manage. Finally, after a few desperate minutes of fiddling, she was in the darkened garage. "Eleanor," she called. Her jaw was stiff, and it was harder and harder to form words. Eleanor's name came out as nah. Maybe the robot girl was hiding from her on purpose. Maybe it was some kind of joke or game. She looked at the ceiling-high storage cabinet around the back wall of the garage. It seemed like a good hiding place. With some difficulty, she grabbed the handle of the cabinet door and pulled. It was an avalanche. Clear plastic bags, holding different objects with different weights and sizes, toppled out of the cabinet and fell to the floor with a dull, sickening thud. Sarah looked at the floor. At first, her brain couldn't even process what she saw. One bag contained a human leg, another a human arm. They were not the body parts of an adult, and they didn't appear to be the result of an accident. Blood pooled in the bottoms of a bag, but the limbs had been severed neatly, as if in a surgical amputation. Another bag, stuffed with bloody, snake-like entrails and what appeared to be a liver, slid from the cabinet shelf and landed on the floor with a wet splat. Why were there body parts in her garage? Sarah didn't fully understand until she saw the small bag that held up a familiar-looking, potato-shaped nose. She screamed, but the sound that came out of her was like the squealing of car brakes. Behind her came a metallic, tinkly laugh. Sarah's lower body was almost immobile, but she dragged herself around to face Eleanor. I made your wish come true, Sarah, the pretty robot said with another metallic giggle. And in return, Sarah noticed something she had never seen on Eleanor before. A heart-shaped button, just below Eleanor's throat, that was a double of Sarah's heart-shaped pendant. Eleanor laughed again, then pushed the heart-shaped button. She jerked and shook, but she also visibly softened, her silver finish turning the pinkish shade of Caucasian skin. In a matter of moments, she was a dead ringer for Sarah. The old Sarah, the real Sarah. The Sarah who, looking back on it, hadn't been so bad-looking after all. The Sarah who had spent way too much time worrying about her appearance. Abby had been right. She'd been right about a lot of things. Eleanor pulled on an old pair of Sarah's jeans, one of her sweaters, and her tennis shoes. Well, you certainly made my wishes come true, Eleanor said, smiling with Sarah's old smile. She pushed the button that opened the garage door. Sunlight flooded the room, and Eleanor Sarah gave a little wave, then skipped out into the sunshine and down the sidewalk. Sarah's ears filled with a deafening clinking and clanking. She couldn't control her movements. Different rusted metal parts disconnected from her and fell clattering to the floor. She was falling apart, collapsing into an ugly trash heap, a hideous, useless collection of garbage to be thrown away and forgotten. In an old mirror propped up against the garbage wall, she saw herself. She was no longer a pretty girl, or a girl at all. She didn't resemble a human of any kind. She was nothing but a rusty, dirty pile of junk. She felt sad. Then she felt scared. And then she felt nothing at all. Yeah. Yeah, that happened. Yep. It's crazy, right? Oh, man. That's it. That is the second story in this book. It's nuts. It's so weird, too, and bizarre. After reading that the first time, I spent a lot of time just thinking about... I don't know. It's weird. It's creepy. I don't know. It was a slow start, though. Like, only the last couple pages were anything remotely creepy. Yeah, okay. So, that was story number 2, To Be Beautiful. It's done now. But, not completely. You see, there might be a little something at the end of the book. See, after the book ends, see, you got the about the author here. If you flip the page, you get this. It's a black page, and it seems kind of disconnected. It doesn't seem similar at all to relate this story, but it might give us a little bit of a hint into what happened there in the end. But I'm not going to read that now. I'm going to read it once I finish the third story, Count the Ways. Because I'm reading this, I'm in charge. But don't worry, I'll read it. It's really weird. It gets even more bizarre. This is such a weird book. That first story was nothing. This is where things start to get strange. I don't know. Even, this whole book is very tame compared to what happens in Fetch, which is so bizarre and much creepier. I don't know, I kind of want to tell you guys what happens right now, but I'm not going to. I'm going to just let you figure it out for yourself. So yeah, I will continue this soon, maybe. See, I think the third story is a bit shorter. Maybe. And it doesn't have a new animatronic either. It has one that we've seen before, and quite the fan favorite, actually. So, I think you guys will be surprised at who shows up. Unless you know already, which, I don't know, the book's been out for 2 months already. You might. Okay, bye. I'm done for now. I'm gonna go. Bye.